Not everyone is seeing massive improvements from introducing AI in the development process. For teams that were already doing well, it seems that adding AI tools makes you go even faster. But for those who were struggling a little, it seems to be making poor performance worse. So I want to talk about the fundamentals. How do we work minute by minute, and how do we take advantage of AI tools in a development process? Hi, I'm Emily Bache. I'm a software developer, creator of Sandman Coaching. Welcome to the Modern Software Engineering channel. If you enjoy the video today, please hit like. And if you've not been here before, consider subscribing. We are several presenters with a common goal to bring you great advice on the technical aspects of modern software engineering. And we all have different points of view and things to share. Let me tell you a story first about getting the fundamentals right. I once knew a guy who played the trombone. He was called Scott, and he was very good at playing the trombone, played jazz professionally. But the trouble was, he had back pain. And if you looked at the way he stood normally, you could actually anticipate that. He was still quite young, but he tended to kind of slouch and round his shoulders a little bit and kind of hang. And now trombones are heavy, and I don't know if you've ever tried to play one, but you start with this kind of posture, you add this big weight on one side with the other arm needing to move the slide. You can see that this big weight here is just going to make a bad situation worse. So what Scott did when he got his back pain was he went to posture lessons using the Alexander technique, just to learn to, stand better, so that when he added that trombone on top of that improved posture, his back would stay straight, able to balance the weight across his shoulders, his back pain improved, and so did his trombone playing. So what, of course, I'm trying to talk about here is software developers, our existing process or our posture, and how we handle this huge new trombone, this agentic AI, on top of what we're doing. And what we're observing is that those with a good existing process and posture are much better able to handle it. And I want to dig into the details of why that is in practice. I've spent much of my career helping ordinary developers write better code and adopt test-driven development. And I've learned that before you can change somebody's behavior, it helps to really understand in detail how they're doing it already, before the change. So what's coming up now is my best description of the most common development process that I observe people using without AI before. I call it coding-driven development. So, step one. Read the story or the ticket, work out what it is. Step two, go into the code base and find a place to start coding. So you read the code until you find a good place and you just start typing. Then, of course, you need to, after a while, run the code to see if it works. So maybe you'll set a breakpoint in your new code and run the system in the IDE, or perhaps you just open up the browser running the app and start clicking around a bit. So then you can evaluate, is my new code change doing what I expected? If it's not, you go back to step two, you start writing more code, and then you perhaps evaluate it again. And eventually, after a few rounds of this, hopefully you'll work out, oh yeah, this is doing what I want now. It looks like it's fulfilling this ticket. And then you think, oh, I need a unit test, and I might need to improve the design a bit to get this through a pull request. So you write tests and perhaps do some refactoring. Then you declare that you're done, you commit, push, create pull request. So that process from taking a ticket to pushing it and it being complete could take anything from a few hours to a few days. And this works. I mean, you get new features in your software. But this process often has significant downsides. There tends to be time pressure that leads you to skimp on those steps that you do after coding when it's already working, like writing the unit tests and improving the design, which can lead to bugs, of course, but more insidiously, the design tends to degrade over time. It gets slower and slower to add new features in the code base as it grows, and that step number two, where you're trying to find a place to start coding, takes longer because you've got more code to look through. And then step three, changing the code, you'll risk breaking existing functionality, especially if you've been skimping on those unit tests over time. So what I've spent many years as a technical coach doing is helping people to change that process to be more effective and to adopt test-driven development. And I want to look carefully at what happens if you haven't done that. If you take this existing coding-driven development process and hang a huge trombone on it, an AI tool. But first, I'd like to pause here and thank our sponsors, Equal Experts, Transfic, Octopus Deploy. We are grateful for their support so that we can keep making these videos. And they're not just random companies. Lots of people want to sponsor this channel, but these are ones that we've chosen because they are actually relevant for people in software like we are. So please go and check out their links in the show notes, find out what they do and whether you could also benefit from their services or perhaps even work for them. Okay, back to the topic, adding AI to a pre-TDD coding-driven development process. Step 1, you read the story or the ticket, and if you've got a huge AI tool, you just give it the text of the story or the ticket and ask it to fix it. Sometimes this works. If your ticket is well explained, small in scope, the code is well organized and the agent is able to work out what to do and where to do it, this actually can be a very good strategy. The AI will fix the issue, you just have to review the code changes and push. Great, job done. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's not going to happen very often because the work items or the tickets are not small and well defined enough, or the code base is too large and disorganized and the agent can't find where to do its code changes. Pleading with the agent, do it again, please, no mistakes this time. That actually doesn't help. What you're missing here is the part of TDD where you slice the feature. You use examples, you make a test list, you plan the development tasks. Most people at this point will just kind of sigh and say, oh, the stupid AI couldn't fix my feature. And then they simply continue to the next step of their normal process. So step 2, we find a place to start coding. And start coding, well, actually, in this case, you ask the AI to write code there. So this is a slightly easier task for the AI. They've got more context. They know where you want the code to be. So it might be more likely to succeed. But the trouble is, this tends to degrade from agentic AI, which is using tools in a loop, to just fancy autocomplete, where you are the tool in the loop. You're in the editor with the AI, directly writing code together, using its inline suggestions. And because you can't realistically set up a good agentic AI loop unless you can specify the outcome that you want before the code exists. And that's a skill that many developers have never practiced. They always launch straight into coding. But of course, defining what you want before you build it is a big part of test-driven development. In practice, what happens is this coding activity still takes some time. You're looking around, trying to figure out which bit of code to change. You're getting support from the AI to make changes and outsourcing smaller and smaller steps to that AI and getting less and less value from it. Eventually, we get to step 3. You're ready to run the code and see if it works. And hopefully you've got your AI agent set up so that it can run the code. So it could perhaps use an MCP tool to click around and verify some workflows, do some manual agentic testing. Which workflows it will test will depend on how well you have described your intention and your acceptance criteria. And again, most developers have very little practice at doing that. So probably you're still doing at least some of that evaluation by hand in the old-fashioned way without AI. So then you get to step 4, is my code working? And if it's not working yet, you go back and continue prompting the agent to write more code. But hopefully at some point you get to this stage where, oh yeah, the code is working now. The agent has been able to confirm it, and maybe the agent already wrote some unit tests for you, but you could always prompt it to write some now. The thing is, the kinds of unit tests that an AI writes in this situation will be different from the kind of unit test you'd get in test-driven development, because they're being written from the point of view of this implementation exists, I need to confirm that it works, which is not the same. In TDD, you're writing the test to express your intention and your success criteria and to ensure that your design is testable and usable. So the tests are playing a different role here. You get less benefit from unit tests if you write them afterwards. Okay, another thing you might do in this step is, of course, improve the design. This code that the agent has written with your help needs to get through a code review. So of course you're going to prompt the AI to perhaps improve the design, write some comments and documentation, and it will be restricted to changing and improving the design in ways that don't break the tests that it just wrote. Now, as I mentioned, those tests are probably pretty tied to the implementation, and they might not allow some axes of improvements that you might have wanted it to improve them along. This is hard to quantify. But still, eventually, you should be happy enough with the design to commit and push, decide the story or the ticket is done, create the pull request as you would have done before. And various AI tools can make that easier for you. Okay, so now I want to make this comparison between normal coding-driven development from the before times compared with this AI-supported coding-driven development that I've just described. Now, the AI tool will have helped you. You may well have done this step faster than you would have before. In his recent video, Dave Farley quoted research that he was involved in that noted a 30 to 50% speed up on this kind of coding task with AI assistance. So it's reasonable that it will have gone faster. So what you're getting by hanging this great big AI tool onto your existing posture is tickets resolved more frequently. But probably all the other problems are still there. You're probably not writing enough of the right kinds of tests. You're probably still not achieving the great code quality that you'd like to have. You're mostly doing what you were doing before, faster. Jason Gorman refers to this as attaching a code generation firehose to your existing development process. If there are bottlenecks downstream of your code changes, testing, support, those are going to get problems because of the volume of changes hitting those bottlenecks. Okay, let me contrast this then with if you have a different initial posture. If your starting point is a TDD process, and then you put that AI tool onto that. Let me outline how this could look. But first, I just want to make it clear where this description comes from, as well as relating my own experience. I've been chatting with perhaps half a dozen people who I know and trust, who were good TDD practitioners in the before times, and I've been asking them about how do they work now, together with AI. All of these are very, very skilled engineers, but none of them are yet using swarms of genies or multi-agent setups. Everyone is using single agent flow, basically, and they're writing little or no code by hand. So the precise mechanics of TDD are different now, but I can still recognize the overall process and underlying fundamental posture. Let me explain. Test-driven development, or behavior-driven development, begins with first understanding the problem. You not only read the story, but you talk to stakeholders, you come up with concrete examples. And these concrete examples help you to explore your understanding of the problem. And of course, AI can help you to come up with those, and also maybe even prototype and to show your stakeholders several ideas and validate that you're thinking along the right lines. Once you've got a good handle on the problem and the kind of examples to illustrate it, the next step is to sketch out a development plan, that test list that comprises those examples that will turn into test cases. Now, AI can help you with this, slicing up the problem. It's a crucial step in TDD with or without AI. You're making a plan that lets you reduce the scope of the problem that you have to solve in each step. Reduce the size of what you need to keep in your context at any one time. So once you've made this sketch of a test plan, test list, you pick the easiest thing to build. It's a scenario, it's an example, and you build just that piece. Now, with agentic AI, the red and green steps of TDD tend to get combined. It writes both the test and makes it pass in the same prompt. But you give the AI a very clear description of what the code should do, and it has this fast feedback loop to run the tests and to change the code. The size of the problem is suitable for it to work on, and actually these tools are incredibly good at that. So hopefully it comes back to you with code and test that works. The next step, of course, in TDD is to refactor, improve the design. Now, a few months, a year ago, I was very skeptical about the ability of AI to refactor safely. But recently it has got so much better. Actually, these days it does have access to some deterministic tools for things like rename and extract method. And it can do a good job here. You have to prompt it a little bit. You have to perhaps have a good design sense of what you're looking for in the design that it should come up with, because the initial code that it comes up with will work, but it's often bloated or lacks other performance characteristics. So the AI can refactor that and keep your test passing. And usually those tests are a pretty reliable guide to whether it's done a good, safe refactoring. So then you get to the next step of TDD, you make a commit. And that's perhaps the biggest difference between this process and the coding-driven development process that I talked about before. You are ready to commit and push much more frequently. The cycle time is measured in minutes, not hours. And the TDD practitioners that I've been talking to are all reporting a cycle time from commit to commit that is very similar or even faster than they were getting in the old times before AI. So it's typically under 10 minutes. Developing the whole feature, of course, still takes time, but you can commit and push small slices of that feature frequently. And this has so many benefits. I will probably need another video to cover that. But suffice to say, your code generation firehose is producing higher quality code and tests more frequently and integrating them more frequently. And in the long run, that helps you to go faster. The other thing about this TDD kind of process that I want to highlight is that you can take advantage of different agents set up with different skills in their context at each step. You can make use of this augmented coding pattern called knowledge documents. That means your development tools will get better every time you go through the coding cycle and update them. That's another big topic, probably for another video. But everyone at the moment is so excited about the prospect of using these AI tools to speed up the development process and get better software into the hands of users sooner. I wanted to inject some reality into this. I described in some detail how a pre-AI coding-driven development process looks in my experience. And that's what I've observed as the most common way people approach development tasks before AI. And then this thing about my friend Scott and his trombone. Adding an AI tool on top of that doesn't tend to produce the results you're looking for. You might need to work on your underlying posture, because the people who are really getting the most out of these AI tools are the ones who are starting from a solid engineering process, have a TDD mindset. They're getting much more advantage from these agentic AI tools. Happy coding!